Welcome to Tenacity with Sonia C., the podcast where we dive into stories behind success, uncovering lessons learned and the insights gained by leaders and innovators in the business world. I'm your host, Sonia, and let's get started. Today's guest joining us is Karina Gardner. Karina is an example to what happens when you channel your creativity energy into a business. From being a renowned surface pattern and craft designer to building a multi-million dollar brand that empowers hobbyists and designers alike. Karina has done it all. She's here to share her journey, insights, and advice for turning your creativity passions into a thriving business. Let's dive in. Hi, Karina. Thanks for joining me today on the Tenacity with Sonia C podcast. Welcome.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here.
Awesome. I'm excited to have you. Our podcast is all about learning from entrepreneurs and leaders who have been there and done it. And I looked at your bio and I have lots of questions, and we're going to have a lot to discuss. So let's get started. Do you want to start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So my name is Karina Gardner. I have a PhD in design, which is a really rare PhD. There's very few of us in the design industry. I own a design program, and that's only been for the last not quite 3 years. Before that, I owned a design business and I taught at the University of Minnesota. And in my design business, I found myself in this crazy tiny little niche of the craft and fabric quilting industries. So this is really niched out. So it's not even like design as a whole, web design, book illustration, cool poster design. It's this tiny little niche of crafting that most people don't even know about. Maybe they've heard of, or someone they know has scrapbooked before, but I was the creative director of a scrapbooking company. And I found in the last 16 years or so that I've been doing this, that one of the things that's been so fascinating is I have made a pretty good amount of money as a designer. And the average designer who comes out with a design degree is making about $50,000 a year.
Mm.
And some of the contracts or freelance designers that I had heard out there were making like 80,000 a year. And I was doing double, if not triple that. And once I started realizing that, I realized that most designers just didn't understand how to use online platforms and freelancing the way I did. So 3 years ago, I started a program. We have had amazing success with our designers. They have been just killing it, doing amazing things. And we became a multi-million dollar company very, very quickly. So we haven't hit quite 3 years yet. We're still a month away from that. But it has been a fast journey to figuring out business because I'm a practitioner, I'm a designer. And so having to make that switch as a true like CEO of company with over 18 people, that has been an interesting
Mm.
change.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, yeah. I mean, that's a good start. There's a lot of takeaways from there. So let me start with my first question. Could you share your journey from being a surface pattern and craft designer to becoming a CEO of a multi-million dollar brand? What motivated you to take the leap from creative to entrepreneur?
Um, Truthfully, I hate to say this, but boredom. And I think this happens a little bit with entrepreneurship, right? I
Yeah.
had figured out a lot about my space. After doing it for 13 years, I had been a creative director. I had owned another company called Minilou, where we were working with like Nordstrom and Peak Clothing, 500 independent stores. And that the margins on that were much smaller than I thought it was going to be. Physical products companies. Like I had this huge physical products company that was doing gross a lot of money, but margin wise, not as much as my independent designer income that was coming in from digital sales. And so once I kind of realized that, I was like, you know what? Like, I think we'll be done with Minilou, or we'll make it be a digital company, which is what we did. It's now a digital asset for us. And I was still making so much money at Karina Gardner Inc. And I was like, you know what? I think there's more. I think there's more I can do here. And I think that me just doing this by myself, it's probably time to get back to my academic roots and teach other people so that they can do the same. So we're on a mission to help creatives really make that transition. It does not have to be this thing that's money sucking, but instead money making.
Okay, fair enough. So you've thought hobbyists to monetize their passions. And we all know that, you know, most entrepreneurs who are successful and love what they do is because they're doing something that originally was a hobby. So I was really intrigued in this question. Can you walk us through the initial steps someone should take to start making money from their hobbies?
Okay, so there's a lot of hobbies out there, right? So you have to figure out what the best next step is. And so there's a lot of different realms for that. The first is just, can you monetize the actual product itself? So I do digital products, so I'm going to give you that example. But if you're not in digital and it's a physical product, then you can kind of figure out what it is from there. So the first step, I think, is, let's pretend we're doing a card. So lots of people love to be card makers, and you know how to sell, or you know how to make a beautiful card. Okay. How do we actually monetize it? Well, we can, one, make the cards and sell the cards, right? So it becomes an inventory piece.
Mm,
Two, we can sell the digital design of the card. So we can sell the design and teach people how to make it themselves, right? So that's one way to do it. Or three, we can become the educator of the people who makes cards in general. Like, you become the educator of, like, how do you make all kinds of cards? So like more of a skill-based level. So, and then there's another level, which is like certification or accreditation, right? Like trying to get them to the next level. I think any of those ways are great ways to make money from a hobby. Now, I'm talking about cards, but this could be canning pickles, right? Like, if
right.
your hobby is to can, right? And I think this came up because I'm thinking I want to learn how to can things. Um, so like, so what would I do, right? Like, I would monetize either making the pickles and selling them, right? That's the physical product. Or I would monetize teaching other people how to can pickles, right? So like some kind of educational video,
Mm,
or possibly even certification, so that like there's an education higher level of teaching people who are certified by me so that they are great canners and other people can trust them, right? So
yeah.
those are all the different layers you can look at.
I like that. I mean, I've always sort of focused on the first part, which is this is my hobby. I'm going to do it and sell it. But I never really thought about the other two that you mentioned. So on that note, um, which one is like looking to the future, right? For someone who might be considering taking a hobby and making a business out of it, which one, looking forward 5, 10 years, is the most profitable and time
Yeah.
effective?
Yeah. So there's a little bit of a balance there. Okay. So I will tell you, always the first one, making the product and selling it, is the worst
That's what
because you've got inventory, right? And I had to learn this lesson the hard way by owning my own physical products company. So even though people will hear we did these big deals with Nordstrom and Peak Clothing, you guys, the margins are insanely low because by the time you put in a warehouse and shipping things and shipping stuff from China or having to try to make it here in the United States, you lose so much margin in it that you have to be at such a high volume. Okay. So always the worst is the physical. The second best is 100% to make it and educate other people how to make it themselves, right? And I actually think this is the easiest, not only in the short term, but in some ways the long term. Because if I'm teaching people how to can and I have a lovely course teaching you how to can, then that sells on its own, right? And could teach people for however long on how they can and make their own stuff. The
Mm,
thing that's at the top is for sure certification. That's what we do in our program. We teach people how to become designers who make money, and we have a certification program, and we're working towards accreditation so that we're more of a college level type program, which kind of already happens because I have a doctorate, but we want that, the credentials that go with it. The problem with that level, which is still a fantastic level, is you almost have to prove yourself first at the middle level, right?
mm,
You have
yeah.
to prove yourself for a little while to make sure that what you can do is actually sustainable before you can offer some kind of certification or some kind of higher level learning for it.
Mm, right, right, right. So transitioning from a creative role to a business owner comes with its challenges. Can you discuss a significant obstacle you faced while building your brand and how did you overcome it?
Oh my gosh. I think
It was probably
I
like tons, right?
Wow. I mean, just talk about failure after failure after failure. And people don't
Failures are
talk.
good though.
Yeah, people don't talk about it, but here's the deal. what I recognize, I was thinking about even last year, I built 3 teams in 1 year. And when you are growing that fast, it means that things fall through the cracks really
Mhm,
fast. You hire the
mhm.
wrong people, you hire the right people, but then can't sustain them. Right. Because you're
Yeah.
like so scattered because you're trying so hard. And I'm a pretty organized person. I'm pretty deliberate, but doesn't mean that when you're growing at such a rapid scale that things do not fall apart. I'm in the middle of this process right now because we just grew our sales team from 2 people to 6 people in the
Mhm,
last 3 weeks. And it is every day, like extra meetings, sometimes 7 p.m. meetings. So, like, some of my fails is in my family life, and people don't realize it because it's kind of the dark side of being an entrepreneur. But at 7:30 at night, if I have to get on with a sales team member to fix something that was done wrong, then who is losing out? My
mhm.
kids, my husband, right?
Yeah.
So there are some sacrifices that people don't realize that makes it hard to be a CEO. When I was a designer, I would throw on Gilmore Girls and I was sitting there designing. My life was pretty happy. I was like loving my life. And when you become CEO and you start managing people, there's a lot of changes there that you don't expect as a practitioner.
Hmm. So, a couple years later, you're in this role. How are you managing that now, that balance and you're still growing, obviously. How are you managing that?
Leadership. By far, the best thing you can do is good leaders. And I would say, so we have 4 leaders on our team, and we're still growing out those teams. But the more I trust the leadership to get things done, this happened today. My sales manager, uh, she's our sales lead, messaged me about a few different things. And I was just like, I'm just handing it to you. Like,
Mm.
you just figure out how to take care of this. I trust you to figure this out. And it is a trust thing because when you're a practitioner or you're the sole person in your business, you
Yeah.
have total control. And I heard someone say this, and I think this is totally true. Like, you can have control or you can grow. And man, I was like, we're growing, so I have to let go a little bit of this control.
I get that, but here's the thing, right? It's your baby, and now you're going to put it on the hands of others. I've struggled with that, where it's like, the sense of urgency is different when it's like an employee versus you. Like, if something comes up and it's urgent, I'm on it. I drop everything. I'm on it. Someone else is like, I'll deal with it tomorrow, right? How do you have a process for how you hire good leaders?
Um, for me, I will admit it's more about organizational behavior and then our personalities matching up.
Mm,
So I have like one person in my leadership team who's a go-getter, like always like ready to go, like on it super fast. My other two tend to be slower and more methodical and thinkers, which
mhm.
I tend not to be. But I don't know that that's a bad thing because sometimes we need the opposites in our team to counteract some of our quick, rash decisions, right? That we're like, oh, we got to get that done. But I agree with you. No one works at the way you want them to work, right? Everything's slower. Like 2 years ago, if I wanted something done, it happened that day. The team moved it really fast and it was ready to go. We don't work like that anymore. Now it will take a week. Sometimes it will take 2 weeks for us to get things going. And I've part of me has accepted that because it's just almost impossible to move that whole ship around the way you want. But I will say one of the best things that we do 2 things, and we do this actually in our program as well. High touch, high communication. So we have a leadership meeting every single week that's an hour long, and we go through a lot. We have my EA takes notes on that meeting, and we're trying to figure things out really closely. But the second thing we do, because I think most people have leadership meetings, the second thing we do is we have an app called Marco Polo. Have you heard of it? Have you ever used?
No.
Okay. So Marco Polo is free. We pay for the paid version, but the Marco Polo app is basically digital video recording back and forth. And we use this actually in our program as well. And what we do is it's on our own timeline. So, for example, I'm in meetings all day today, so I can't talk to anyone on my team. But Tammy has already Marco Polo'd me. And when I have an in between space, I will listen to what she is talking about, what her concerns are, what's going on. So I'm getting the most up to date I can without actually being in a meeting with her. And then I will Marco Polo her back and be like, okay, I got that. Do you want to meet at 4 today? She'll be like, yes, let's do that. But like we have such it, a lot of people use Slack. We use Slack for our main team, but for anything that's urgent, for anything that we have concerns about, for anything that we need to talk through and brainstorm as a team, it happens on Marco Polo.
Okay, that's good to know. Do you ever feel like you've lost control of your baby because you have all these people that you've brought on?
No, because I think that if you are a really good vision setter, which you should be as a CEO, right? You should be painting a scene for your team on the weekly about what you're trying to accomplish. And so
Yeah,
if they know what you're trying to accomplish and you are charismatic and you bring the energy, sometimes I see CEOs, they don't bring the energy to the room. They're just like systematic, like do this, do this,
yeah,
do this. That's not the way it's supposed to be. Like if you show up to the room, you have the high energy that's necessary and you're like, this is what we're doing. You guys are amazing. We're going to rock it this week. In a lot of ways, you're like the head coach of the team, right? And so
yeah,
you're showing them the vision. If they're not getting it, then they're not meant to be part of your organization.
yeah. What happens when you're not feeling the energy back from your team?
Um, it means that something is off.
Okay.
And sometimes it's not anything to do with your team, right? It's actually usually personal stuff is what I find. I have an all woman team and
Okay.
and I think we have two guys on the team, our video editor and one of our admission specialists, but everybody else is a woman. And I will tell you this, you're the therapist. You're the high therapist in your group and you're making sure everyone's on track because if someone is low for a reason, it might not be because of you. And I think sometimes we take it personally as CEOs, as creative directors, as a person in charge. We think it's about us. It's very actually rarely about us. It might be that they're feeling like they don't understand the job. That's something you can correct. You can't correct family life, family emergencies, if something's going on mentally with them that they need help with. And so those direct report meetings are really important. Every person in our company gets a direct report meeting, if not weekly on the bi-weekly, so that there's actual check-ins with what is going on with them.
Okay, I like that. So transitioning from creative role to, sorry, I already asked that question. Yes, I did. Let me move on. Um, your favorite topic is helping designers create steady income by selling their work digitally. What key factors have contributed to the success of digital marketplaces for creatives, and how can new designers stand out?
Yeah, so digital marketplaces, 16 years ago, I discovered them. That's how I got into this. It was digital back then, it was digital scrapbooking, which is not very hot anymore, but it was very hot for about 3 to 4 years. And I was making a lot of money doing it. Now there's so many trends. There's so many things you can do. We in the crafting market, we have, do you know what a silhouette or a Cricut machine is? Okay,
I've heard of
so
it.
yeah. So cutting files, right? Which is people are using to make party gear. They're using it to cut out vinyl or to make t-shirts. Sublimation machines, which is what you'll see for inking on t-shirts or fabric or creating fabric, like any kind of like multi-pattern color, whatever. Printables. One of the biggest marketplaces, teacher pay teachers, right? Because teachers are buying packets. I'm pretty sure my daughter was just using a Romeo and Juliet packet that was totally bought from Teachers Pay Teachers because it's like you can now download and pay a pretty inexpensive price to get a beautifully made packet that's educational, right? So there's
Okay.
so many ways to make money in the digital realm, but most people just have not paid attention to the marketplaces that already exist for it. So I'm passionate about it because it does a couple of things. First of all, I work directly with women we call who are in their encore career. So 45 to 65. None of those women want to ship inventory, nor do they want to buy inventory and have it at their house. So, what is best is to sell and design a product that people can print on their own, that people can download and use on their own. So,
Mm,
that's why I love it.
okay. You have experience working with manufacturers and securing contracts. What advice do you have for creatives looking to navigate these partnerships? And what are some of the must-knows for successful collaboration?
Yeah, 100%. The biggest thing I see out there, and I see lots of design companies or design programs telling you, we can help you get a licensing degree, or we're going to teach you how to make money. And it's always from a licensing contract. First of all, you have to know that you have to think like a creative director. I was a creative director. I saw lots of stuff come over to my desk, and we said no to most of it. And a lot of it is because people don't think like a creative director, they think like a designer. So they're
Mm,
just like trying to put their stuff in. A creative director is looking at the holistic picture of all the design work that's coming through. So your stuff has to be different enough, look and feel style wise different enough for them to hire you. So if your stuff looks like everything else out there, if you go, my stuff is as good as, that is the wrong phrase to be using. It is
mm.
not going to work.
So you have to really make yourself unique and stand out from, thousands of other people that are doing the exact same thing as you are, right?
Yeah, exactly. And most of the time, most designers haven't put enough experience under their belt to start doing that. So we'll see brand new designers like sending their stuff off to manufacturers, and we're like, oh man, you just burned that hole. You should have waited 2 years, gone online digitally, tested your stuff, see what sells the best, and bring that to the table to a creative director because that's how you're going to get a deal.
Oh, okay, I get it. So your program, Design Suite, grew into $1 million business partly due to a strong focus on community. What strategies have you found most effective for building and nurturing a community supporting the business and its members' growth?
Listen to your members. They will ask you for things that you do not want to do. So
Right.
I got into this to teach design. I have a PhD in design. I was like, you know what? Academically, I'm just going to critique people's work. They're going to turn their stuff in. I'm going to teach them great design skills. This is how I'm going to do it. Well, a couple months into it, they're all like, hey, Karina, can we have like a community forum? Can we talk to each other? I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't want to deal with that. And they were like, no, please. And so I did. So I opened up a community forum. About 4 or 5 months later, they said, hey, Karina, we would like to talk to each other. And I was just like, wait, what? Like, huh? And I was
Why?
like, they're like, we want to hang out with each other. We see each other, we see each other's stuff on your meetings. We like love each other's stuff. We want to talk to each other. And I was just like, seriously? And they were like, yeah. So we actually started this thing. They named it squads. I was like, if you guys want to do this, then you guys are going to name. I had a huge meeting, like every
Mm,
designer. It was like this crazy meeting. I said, what do you guys want to do? And they were like, okay, we want to have meetings. And I was like, okay, great. So twice a month, you guys can meet. Now we only meet once a month because we have so many other things going on, but they
mm,
meet once a month. They're in small groups of about 10 people and they start talking to each other. And that came from the community. That didn't come from me. That
mm.
came from them saying, we'd like to hang out with each other. Now we use Marco Polo so they can talk to each other daily on top of that. So they have lots of ways to touch point with each other and my design coaches.
Mm. You touch a good point. Like, I feel like, just entrepreneurship and trying to start a new business and going through coaching, like, you need people on your corner or even friendships that are sort of like at your level or be around people who understand where you're at, what you're trying to do. And sometimes your regular friends are not doing what you're doing, so they don't get it. So I could totally see the need for your community to be like, we want to talk to other designers because they want to be, they want to have other people just like them that they can have conversations with.
In retrospect, it was like a duh moment, right? Like, of
Right.
course they want to hang out with each other. But as the owner of the program, all you can think about is how am I going to make this work? How am
Hmm.
I going to make sure that they're all going to get along, right? Like, because you're like, oh, I'm dealing with all these adults and they're women. And, I remember back in the day, this is like 10 years ago, but I think it still happens now on social media. But there were these awful Facebook groups where people were mean to each other, especially in the crafting universe. There would be people who were unkind to each other. And I was just like, I will not allow that to happen in my community. Thankfully, we monitor everybody who comes in. We're very selective about who comes into our program to begin with. And that has kept the community really nice and clean. But, I was quite nervous about that. You don't know what kind of can of worms you're opening up, you
Yeah,
know?
for sure. You kind of lose control a little bit because now it's the wide net, who knows what could happen. So
Yeah.
it is a little scary. But we're coming up to time, so I want to ask you one last question. Looking ahead, what trends or opportunities do you see emerging, and how can inspiring creative entrepreneurs position themselves to take advantage of these trends?
Well, I think the big buzzword right now is AI, right?
Yeah.
And designers are really nervous about AI. Actually, I'm coming out with a seminar about it because it shouldn't be something that should be nervous for anyone in any field. Instead, yes, are there going to be negative consequences? Of course, but there are also lots of pros. And here's the thing, none of us are going to be able to stop it from coming at
No.
this point, right? So my feeling is always put your best foot forward, use the resources that you have available to you and use it the best you can. And instead of pondering on how it used to be or the negative aspects, that is not going to serve you. The only thing that's going to serve you is what you have to do moving forward. So use the things that are around you, the things that like really bolster you up and give you positive energy, because that's how you're going to win.
Yeah, I always thought, I mean, I'm in tech, so obviously AI is like my best friend, but have conversation all the time with people who think that AI is gonna, replace them or replace their job. And I've gotten to a point in my personal uh work day where I use AI every day, and it's made my life easier, not harder. So just on the topic of what you're saying, I always tell people use AI to your advantage, and AI is there to make your life easier, not replace you. And, if you know how to use AI properly, you'll really see the benefits of it. So I think, for your particular community or people trying to use their hobbies and be creative, yes, there's a lot of AI tools out there now that seem like they're a little scary, but you can actually use them to your advantage.
Yeah, always 100%. And I think scarcity mindset is always something that's going to deter you as an entrepreneur. So trying to think about how you can be ingenious about the resources around you, that includes AI, that includes all the things you already know, the experiences you already have, the education you already have.
Yeah.
That's how we win.
Okay, well, we're coming to an end, but before we wrap up, can you tell our listeners how they can find you, your programs, and everything like that?
Yeah, if you want to learn more about what I'm doing, you can go to karinagardner.com. But I do have something free for you guys. If you know someone who's a designer or creative, and maybe that is you, if it's not, that's okay too. You might still enjoy this. My newest book out, it's called Make Art That Sells. It's on Amazon. But if you go to makeartbook.com, not only will you see the book there, which you don't have to get, there's a masterclass there. It's about 6 really fun lecture lessons. And if you use the code MAKEART on that, just click on that link, put in the code MAKEART, it will be free to you. So right now it has a price on it. Just use the code MAKEART at makeartbook.com. And that book is really fun because it's a formula for creativity. So like you can see how you can create a business and what all the steps are in it. And every chapter is a new artist. So it's a little bit of an art history book. So we have a chapter on Picasso and on Norman Rockwell and Lucien Bernhard and Monet. And so it's a little bit fun. And then you get a piece of the formula so that by the end of the book, which is a pretty short book, you have the full formula and you can plug and play for your own business.
Oh, I love that. I'm sure our listeners will definitely take advantage of it. And that's fantastic because we end the podcast with the tools for you to take your hobby and learn how to make it a business, right? Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and sharing your experience and a little bit of your journey with us.
You're so welcome.
And that's a wrap. I want to thank Karina for joining us today and sharing her journey from a creative designer to a pioneering entrepreneur. Karina's story is a powerful reminder that with tenacity, creativity, and the right strategies, turning your passion into a profitable business isn't just a dream, it's a viable reality. To our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery and inspiration. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform. Leave a review and tell me what topics you'd like me to explore in the future. Remember, the future belongs to those who embrace change and innovation with tenacity. Keep striving, keep innovating, and most importantly, stay tenacious in your pursuits. Thank you for tuning in. I look forward to bringing you more inspiring conversations in upcoming episodes. This is Sonia signing off. But as always, remember to chase your dreams with tenacity.